For the last full class of new steam locomotives purchased by the Boston and Maine, the railroad turned to Baldwin. The designers at Eddystone came up with the Class R 482 mountain-type locomotive. Reportedly the heaviest mountains ever built in the United States, they were actually an outdated machine in many respects. Most railroads and builders were opting for the 484 arrangement by that time, and in fact, a brief glance at the R's could even lead the casual observer into believing that they were indeed 484 Northerns. The first three subclasses were basically identical, with only minor differences. All had coffin feedwater heaters and 12-wheel riveted tenders. The R1Ds were somewhat different. Centipede tenders, Worthington SA feedwater heaters, and cylinder saddle cast with exhaust integral, precluding external exhaust pipes. Again though, very similar. These dual-purpose machines were equally at home on hotshot freights or passenger service, and saw heavy use in both areas. The R1 Mountains were all built between March 1935 and July 1941. They numbered 18 in total. The R1As, number 4100 through 4104, were all built in March 1935 and were built with 28 by 31 cylinders. The R1Bs, numbers 4105 through 4109, were built between April 1937 and June 1937, and were also built with 28 by 31 cylinders. There were only three R1Cs, number 4110 through 4112. These were built in June of 1939, and were built with 28 by 31 cylinders again. Finally, there were five R1Ds. These were built in June and July of 1941, and once again with 28 by 31 cylinders. The very last R1, number 4117, was built in July of 1941. Number 4117 was the highest regular numbered steam locomotive on the Boston and Maine. The first three classes of R1s were delivered in the standard box herald scheme that the Boston and Maine used on its steam locomotives, but the R1Ds were delivered in a flashy new speed lettering style. Interestingly enough, all of the R1 Mountains had nicknames. This was part of a naming campaign taken on by local school children in the Boston area. The corresponding numbers and names were as followed. Number 4100, Endurance. Number 4101, Hannah Dustin. Number 4102, Cardigan. Number 4103, Oliver Wendell Holmes. Number 4104, B and Emma, a phonetic spelling of B and M, aka B&MRRHS, in a New England accent. Number 4105, the Powwow River. Number 4106, Little John. 4107, the Intrepid. 4108, Lily Ponds. 4109, the Bumblebee. 4110, Calvin Coolidge. 4111, Trojan. 4112, the Swallow. 4113, Black Arrow. 4114, Invincible. 4115, Casey Jones. 4116, American Progress. And 4117, Hercules. We should take a minute to discuss number 4108, the Lily Pons. Lily Pons, of course, was a famous opera star at the time in the 1930s. She enjoyed a long association with the Metropolitan Opera in New York City and performed nearly 300 times between 1931 and 1960. Pons was a marketable cultural icon. Her ideas on fashion were frequently reported in women's magazines and often became fads. In 1937, the Boston and Maine invited Lily to North Station to be part of a dedication ceremony to the locomotives that had been named. Lily Pons appeared on stage with many of the children wearing banners with the names of the locomotives that they had provided to the Boston and Maine. A placard featuring the name Lily Pons was placed on the side of the locomotive, along with the name of Wayne E. Whittemore of Hobbs Junior High School in Medford, Massachusetts, the student who had suggested the name for the locomotive. Lily posed in the cab of the locomotive and created quite a photo opportunity for the Boston and Maine to use in their own marketing purposes. The Mountains proved themselves very capable and reliable power, doing yeoman service during the crush of World War II traffic. Following the heavy traffic crush of World War II, and with dieselization beginning to pick up in force post-war, the Boston and Maine began to part with their mountains, specifically when the Fitchburg division of the Boston and Maine became heavily dieselized. In 1947, classes R1A, B, and C were sold to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad and ended their useful service there. This left only 5 mountains remaining on the Boston and Maine, 4 of which, numbers 4114 through 4117, were all scrapped on September 28, 1955. Number 4113 lingered on for about another year, being scrapped on September 20th, 1956, after doing some brief time in snow melter and steam generator service. Being too heavy to be bumped down when dieselization occurred on the Fitchburg division in 1946, they were among the first large steam locomotives to go on the Boston and Maine. The R1s are beloved among Boston and Maine steam enthusiasts. Their late purchase in the steam era certainly was unique, but they provided valuable power for the Boston and Maine prior to and during the war years. Their tenure on the Boston and Maine was relatively short compared to the other steam locomotives that we have discussed in this series, but they surfaced time and time again in photographs, film, and even on model railroads. Despite their brief time in the sun on the route of the Minuteman, the R1 class mountains will always hold a dear place in the heart of steam enthusiasts. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss a new video. And head on over to our website, www.B&MRRHS.org, where you can learn how to support our nonprofit organization, sign up to become a member, browse an extensive online archive of B&M materials, watch more programs, listen to our podcast, or browse our online store.